this upcoming lessons, we are going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions that have uncommon or unlike denominators. But before we get started on that, there are some terms and vocabulary that you will want to know in order to make these upcoming lessons just easier to understand. So the first thing that we're going to just look at really quickly is multiplication chart. So right here is a multiplication chart. What I have included here is a 10 by 10 times table or a multiplication chart. There are others that are much larger, up to 50 times 50, but for our purposes in here, we are going to be using a 10 by 10. Additionally, I would always encourage you to use a multiplication chart or a times table if you ever have any trouble remembering your multiplication facts, because in order to find common denominators, you have to know your multiplication facts or have a multiplication chart. The other term that we're going to review on this page is common multiple. So a common multiple is simply a number that two other numbers have in common. So let's look at an example really quickly. Let's look at the number 4 and the number 2. So when I am trying to find a common multiple of 4 and 2, the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to look all the way across my 2 column, and then I'm going to look at the 4 column. Only when I look at the 4 column, I'm going to be looking at, or the 4 row, I'm going to be looking for numbers that 2 have in common. So pretty quickly, I can see that both of these numbers, 2 and 4, have 4 in common. So 2 and 4 have a common multiple of 4. Let's look at another one really quickly before we move on. Let's look at 3 and 7. So I am going to start with 3, and I'm just going to look all the way across, and I am going to just see all of those numbers. Next, I'm going to look at my 7 row, and I'm going to start looking across, only this time I'm going to be specifically looking for numbers that 3 and 7 share. So I'm going to start going, and pretty soon I notice that they both have a 21. So this lets me know that 3 and 7 have 21 as a common multiple. So the other term that you are really going to need to know and understand moving forward in this lesson is a term called equivalent fractions. You may remember that we've already talked about this a little bit in the Intro to Fractions video, but just in case you need a little refresher, we're going to just talk about it a little bit again. So if you will recall, an equivalent fraction is a fraction that they all have the same value, even though the numerators and the denominators may look a little different. So what I have up here are some visuals, and you will notice that I have 1 over 2 or 1/2. I'm going to go ahead and shade that in right now, just so I can visually understand what 1 over 2 or 1/2 looks like. And so I have that one. The next one to the right, I have 2 over 4 or 2/4. I'm going to go ahead and shade that in as well. And remember, the number that I am shading in blue is my numerator. This is my part, and the green, which is the denominator, represents the whole. Now moving right along to 3 over 6 or 3/6, I'm going to go ahead and shade in 3. And then I'm going to look over to 4/8 and I'm going to shade in 4. So now hopefully what you realize by just looking at these visuals is they all have the same amount shaded as they do unshaded, and all 4 visuals are equivalent or the same. So a lot of times when we are adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators, we have to find what is called an equivalent fraction, or a fraction that may look a little bit different, but they have the same value. So all this page means is that 1/2 is equivalent or the same as 2/4, and 2/4 is the same or equivalent to 3/6, and 3/6 is equivalent or the same to 4/8. So all of these fractions, even though they look different, they have the same value.